Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi, everyone who's joining. I am Catherine Alonzo. I'm our host today, and I am going to give a few seconds for everybody to join. If you wouldn't mind, as you're joining today, dropping your name and your organization in the chat, just so we can see who is joining us today, that would be wonderful. Great. Welcome, everybody. As you're joining, if you didn't hear me before, if you're able to add your name and your organization in the chat, that would be great. Today, I am going to be talking about the defining skill of the 21st century, the essential skill that every single leader really needs today. And I'm excited to see some familiar names joining. And for those of you that I haven't met before, it's a pleasure to see you today. And thank you so much for joining. If you're still filing in, just throw your name and org in the chat when you can. And then if you have questions as you go along, feel free, as we go along today, feel free to put them into the Q&A. And then I'll answer any questions at the end. So once again, my name is Catherine Alonzo, and I am so excited to be talking today about, like I mentioned, the defining skill of the 21st century. And when you think about what that is, what is the most important skill that every single leader needs? You might think about things like preparing for technology and learning to navigate new technologies and develop new technical skills. And that is certainly needed today and is going to be needed more and more as we keep going. You might think about things like creating positive team culture and managing strong teams. And that, of course, is an absolutely critical skill for today's world. And then you might also think about problem solving and being able to solve problems, another thing that is vital for leaders today. But there is a central skill that runs through and relates to all of those things. And that is the ability to prepare for and respond to change. And that is what we are going to be talking about today. How, as leaders, can you prepare for and respond to change so that you can ultimately drive more impact in your local community and within your sector? But before I do that, I want to introduce myself a little bit and tell you one thing about me, which is that I am originally from the UK. And for anyone who hasn't met me, I think it's important to share that so that you don't spend the next hour wondering what part of Australia I am from, which is the most common question that I get. I have been here for 19 years now. And so I have this strange cocktail accent where I just sound foreign everywhere. But I am, in fact, originally from the UK. And it was there, I was born in Scotland, and it is there that the most important event of my entire life occurred. In fact, I think it has shaped who I am as a person and everything that I care about. And that is that when I was 6 months old, my older brother Rory died in an accident. And I do not remember Rory. It was 3 weeks before his third birthday. And like I said, I was 6 months old. We were only on the earth together 163 days. And I don't know what it is like to lose a child, but I do know what it is like to grow up in a grieving family. And this is me and Rory and my parents just a little while before Rory's death. And like I said, I do know what it's like to grow up with a front row seat to what that kind of loss does to a family and how it shapes people. And at the same time, me and my younger brother had everything you would want any kid to have. We had fun vacations, we had in-jokes, we had incredible holidays. And my parents taught me and my younger brother two really important lessons. One is that life does not come with a safety blanket. As they said to us, bad things happen to good people. And I just grew up with the sense that the rug could be pulled out from underneath me at any moment. And the second thing they taught us is that given that reality, The only power that any of us really have is to make a difference in the lives of other people. And that this is a power that you must choose to use. And I think this really instilled in me a drive to make a difference in the world and to drive positive change in the world around me. And I spent my younger years really trying every job, hobby, and vocation that I could to figure out how that I would do that. And it really led me to moving to Arizona to study my master's degree at Arizona State University to do my degree in public administration. And in my last semester of my master's degree, I volunteered on a political campaign. And doing that really changed my entire life because for the first time, I met my people. I met other people who, like me, were really driven to drive change, to improve the lives of those around them. And I found it really addicting. And I loved being a part of that. And it is what led me to found my first company, Javelina. Javelina is a branding and marketing agency that works with all different kinds of organizations to drive social and systemic change. And within that work, I have gotten to work on some of the most critical change movements and change campaigns of our time. I've been a part of efforts to secure critical funding for education, transportation, and public infrastructure. I've been a part of campaigns that seek to change minds on issues like reproductive rights and homelessness and housing. And in that work, I have gotten to work with some of the most incredible change makers. And it has really been the incredible honor of my life, while at the same time building two businesses that really seek to work with social change makers, Javelina being the first one. And now I also go into organizations and work with teams to help them introduce and implement systems that can really help them drive change at the local level. And like I said, it has been the honor and the privilege of my lifetime. And within that work, what I have learned is that every single change maker shares this skill, which is the ability to prepare for and respond to change. So what is it exactly that looks like? What we're going to be going over today is a fairly simple framework, and I'm going to be breaking this down. You might have seen in the communications sent about the CivEx today that on October 16th, we're going to be doing a day-long workshop where we really start to go into some of the ideas that I'm introducing today and starting to actually develop some of the systems and the tools that we're talking about. So if you haven't already, make note of that, and I can answer more questions about that at the end of the session. So what is it that this framework looks like? So it starts with vision. And from vision, we move into core values, and then core values drives taking action. Action feeds conviction, and then conviction loops back around to feeding your vision. That might sound a little bit lofty, so I'm going to go into that in far more detail in our time together today. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about why this is so important. Why is it that I am so passionate about helping change makers advance the impact that they are making? So starting off, I want to ask you a question today, and a poll will pop up on your screen in a second. So if you can just take a second to answer that poll, I'd be grateful. And the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic do you feel about the future of the world? On a scale of 1 to 5, on a scale of 1 to 5, how optimistic do you feel about the future of the world? Give you a second to answer. Okay. Those results should pop up in a second. There you go. So you see here that a big chunk of the group today are feeling sort of in the middle, optimistic about the future of the world. And if you add, I'm not very good at on the spot math, but if you add the 3, the 4, and 5 together, that's actually a decent majority. And then if you add the 3, the 2, and the 1 together, that's a big chunk as well. So what you're really seeing here is there's not overwhelming optimism about the future of our communities, and you are not alone in feeling that way at all. We, in fact, are living at a time of historically high concern for the future and very low trust in our public institutions. So last year, Pew Research Center did research and discovered that 63% of Americans express not too much or no confidence in the future of the political system. 63%, that's such a high number. And at the same time, you might be able to relate to this one. 65% reported feeling exhausted at the mere mention of politics. So Gallup have been, since 1973, I think, Gallup Research Center have been testing levels of public confidence in a broad range of institutions among the American public. So every year they ask the American public how much confidence they have in a huge range of institutions, from Congress and the presidency to schools and small businesses. And since 2022, they have found historically low confidence in a whole range of institutions. In fact, this year, the 2024 research found that 28% of Americans report high confidence across the board if you average it out. And then 26% reported high or some confidence in the presidency. And then it goes down with different institutions. So newspapers received 18%, big business 16%, and Congress only 9% of Americans had confidence in that institution. And so we really are living at a time of record high concern for the future and record low trust in public institutions. And then you wrap around that this thing that we are all living through, which is an incredibly high pace of change. In fact, the pace of change that we are all experiencing is completely unprecedented for anything that we have lived through before. A little story just to demonstrate this point. So I am not sure if you have had the opportunity to drive in a Waymo yet, a driverless car. If you live in the Phoenix area, perhaps you've had the pleasure. It is one of my favorite things to do now when friends and family come and visit me in the Valley. It's almost like replaced museums as the top thing that I do with my guests, is take them in a driverless car. And my mom was visiting from the UK last Christmas. And when I first suggested to her that we try out this driverless car, she was like, "No, Catherine, I am not intending to lose my life on holiday," is what she said. And I just slowly kind of warmed her up to the idea we would see them around town and I would point them out like, "There's a Waymo, there's a Waymo." And she slowly warmed up to the idea. And so then toward the end of her visit, I finally convinced her to give it a go. And we get in the car, and at first she's sitting in the front and she has like a vice-like death grip on the side of the car, as if she's going to the whole thing's going to blow up in any second. And as the car pulls away, you sort of slowly saw her relax. And after a minute, she said, "I don't feel unsafe." And then she pulls out her phone and starts recording the whole thing. And as the car is taking its first left-hand turn, she's filming and she's just like giggling. And then a couple of days later, I was taking her to the airport to say goodbye. And on the way, we stopped off for coffee. And I asked her, "What was your favorite thing that we did this holiday?" And consider that this was a trip over the Christmas period. So we saw my husband's family. We did all these fun shows. We went to new restaurants. And I said, "Mom, what was your favorite part?" And without a beat, she said, "Oh, it was definitely going in the Waymo." And If you reflect on just the incredible rate of change that she has lived through, that in her household growing up, they didn't have a car when she was a younger child, and then they had one car, and we've moved from that to now being able to move around in these cars that don't have drivers. That is an insane rate of change. And it is not just technology that we're witnessing this change in. Cultural attitudes, political attitudes, technology, workplace norms. If you think about your life in 2019, which was just 5 years ago, there's probably been some really huge changes in how you do your work, what your workplace is like, what governs your behavior. And that is really incredibly, an incredible pace of change. Oops. In 1999, a futurist named Ray Kurzweil wrote a book about the pace of change. And in it, he predicted that in the 100 years of the 21st century, we would witness the equivalent of 20,000 years of change. Now, the writer, Michael Simmons, translated that as follows. 20 years from now, the rate of change will be 4 times what it is today. Said another way, for someone who is about 40 today, when they're 60 in 2040, the rate of paradigm change will be 4 times what it is right now. They will experience a year of change by today's standard in 3 months. For someone who is 10 today, when they are 60, they will experience a year of change in 11 days. I want to let that just sink in for a second. That is incredible. And we are all not only living in that, but we're leading and working in that incredible pace of change that impacts our teams, our families, and also ourselves. And so consider that at the moment, in your role as a social change maker, you are experiencing incredibly high concern, not only for the people that you work with and also for the people that you serve, but also for your wider communities. And there's a really good chance yourself as well. Also, this incredibly high rate of change. And what those two things create is an unprecedented rate of uncertainty. And it really feeds into this feeling that we have no control. And so if you have been feeling unsettled and challenged in your work of late, it is absolutely no wonder. This is something that really permeates every element of life at the moment, and it isn't really looking like it's going to slow down. And so then what is your job as a social change leader? How is it that you can navigate this to prepare for and respond to change, but also to be able to drive impact in these circumstances and in this situation? The very first thing you need to do is to focus on what is possible instead of what is missing. Focus on what is possible instead of what is missing. This is one of my very, very favorite parables, and you might be familiar with it. There is a grandson and a grandfather sitting on a bench together one day, and the grandfather turns to his grandson and he says, "You know, grandson, inside of you there are 2 wolves, and these 2 wolves are fighting at all times. The one wolf represents everything that is good in the world, all the things that you would want more of, joy and happiness and peace and laughter. And the other wolf represents the things that are difficult and the things that you would like to minimize or see less of in the world: anger, pain, frustration, and loss." And these 2 wolves are always fighting. And the grandson, kind of understandably panicked, looks up at his grandfather and says, "But grandfather, which wolf is going to win?" And the grandfather says, "Son, it's the one that you feed." And this is kind of what it is like at the moment within our communities and within the social change work that we are driving, is there's these 2 wolves. But here's the kicker, is that the bad wolf has plenty to feed on. Headline news really just drives all of the things that are going wrong in our society. And that perpetuates and permeates over and over and over. And so your job as the leader of your team, your job as a social change leader, is to feed the hope. wolf. You want to feed the wolf that represents everything that is possible in the work that you do, and not everything that is missing in the world today. And the most important thing that you need, the tool that you need to be able to do that, is a vision story. Creating change begins with being able to articulate and really see the better world that you are creating. This vision story is going to be how, as a leader, you are able to feed the hope wolf for your team. And here I am not talking about a vision statement. Vision statements are super important. They tend to be, a sentence or two long. They're very aspirational, sometimes utopian, and it's a really important part of doing our work. What I'm talking about in a vision story is something that has a measurable timeline. So let's say it's 10 years away. And it really paints a picture of the very specific, tangible world that you are working toward creating. I'm going to show you an example. This example is from an organization that provides programming for after-school programming for middle schoolers. So this vision story, in 2034, our programs, teams, and outcomes help to create a community where each child grows more confident, connected, and joyful, while every family finds relief and support. Every middle school student leaves their school day with excitement and a sense of belonging. In our vibrant, welcoming centers, kids engage in fun and educational activities that spark their curiosity and build lasting friendships. Parents and families feel supported, knowing their children are in a safe and nurturing environment. We are committed to the well-being of our team, ensuring they have the support and resources they need to thrive. Our organization is financially healthy, allowing us to focus on what matters the most, our kids and their families. As part of a strong network of community organizations, we work together to create a supportive, interconnected environment where every child and family can succeed and flourish. Now, what you see here is a very specific, reachable vision of the world that this organization is creating. And what they touch on here is not only the world they're creating for the people that they serve, but also the world they're creating for the people connected to those that they serve, so the parents and families, but also their team, like within their organization. What does the world look like? And I highlighted some words here that really serve to paint this picture, this connected, confident, joyful, vibrant, welcoming, supported, these emotive feelings words that demonstrate the power of the world that this organization is seeking to create. And this is not aspirational. I mean, it is aspirational in the sense that it's 10 years out, but it is not utopian. This is something this organization is meaningfully and specifically working toward creating. If you want to create or revisit, because some of you might have something like this, if you want to create or revisit this within your teams, there's a super simple way to do this, which is to start off by, as a group, listing all the things about the status quo that are not working for you right now. And then you want to imagine what could be possible instead. So you might start off with a statement like, kids are experiencing increased rates of anxiety and depression. And you want to get all the status quo statements on the left-hand side of the page or the board. And then, and this is the really fun part, as a team, you want to just ask, or what could also be true in the future? What could replace the status quo that is better? What is it that we want to create? What possibility is it that we want to focus on? So the example here, or kids are socially connected and have the tools they need to foster confidence. And then when you have a big, long list of all of the ors, then you can start to create themes and buckets and put it together into a narrative form. For this activity, you can use any time horizon, depending on the scope and the scale of what you're working on. This is something that you could do for a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If it's a really sort of big organization that you're steering, you could even go to 15. I think beyond that, it's difficult to imagine. You don't have enough information about what that's going to look like, but it works for any sort of long range time horizon. You want to invite your teams, your boards, your community to contribute to this. This is something that you are creating together. And this is something, your vision story, that you want to use to guide decisions. This is absolutely not a sort of feel-good activity that you create once and then put in the shelf. The vision story is a tool for the social change leader that you use incorporate it and use it in your daily work. And then what you want to do is communicate this vision with passion and clarity, not only internally, but also to the people you serve and your wider community. But having this vision is not about rose-colored spectacles. It is not about saying everything is going to be perfect in the future. We are going to create this ideal world. That is not what a vision story is about, and is not what your job is as the social change leader. In fact, your job is to be really realistic about what it will take to get from the point you're at today to the point that you're creating in your vision story. And your job is to hold the tension between these two things. This might be best summarized by Admiral Jim Stockdale, who said, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be." Admiral Jim Stockdale was a prisoner of war in the Vietnam War, and he shared this as a reflection on how he was able to survive his captivity. And it relates really well as a leadership lesson, that your role is to hold the tension between the vision that you are seeking to create and everything you need to navigate between now and then. But how is it that you do that? So far, we know that one of the tools that you need is this vision story. And the next tool that you need in order to navigate all of the challenges that exist between now and creating that vision story, in turning that into reality, is a deep knowledge of what your core values are. Now, I want to say here that core values work is really important on an organizational level, but what I am referring to here is your individual personal core values as a leader. I have found that being able to articulate what my core values are and use them in on a day-to-day basis in my leadership has been absolutely transformative, and it has also been so impactful for the social change leaders that I work alongside as well. What do I mean by core values? Core values are the root beliefs that matter the most and drive your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. One more time. Core values are the root beliefs that matter the most and drive your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. So I want to ask you a quick question here. And if your answer to this is yes, just raise your little emoji hand, or feel free to sort of indicate in the chat or any other way if this applies to you. But how many people here get their tires aligned on an annual basis? If you do, just raise your hand. How many of you get your tires aligned in your car on a daily basis? Okay, I'm seeing some hands. Oh, not on a daily basis, on an annual basis. Okay, a few people. So it turns out, as I was preparing and researching this idea, by the way, you're supposed to get your tires aligned in your car annually. Who knew? I certainly don't. And the reason that you get your tires aligned in your car is that when there is alignment between those four tires, you are reducing friction in the vehicle. And when you're reducing friction in the vehicle, it is able to work optimally, which decreases wear and tear on the vehicle, saves money, but also increases safety because accidents are less likely to occur. Other things are less likely to go wrong. And another sort of familiar, a similar analogy, which might be more applicable to more people, is yoga. So for any of you that have taken a yoga class, you might have heard the phrase happy spine, happy life. And yoga is essentially the same thing. It is the process, it is the practice of aligning to the central core in the body. And when we are aligned, whether it's in our human body with yoga or in our car with tires, we really are able to minimize that friction. And that is when we are able to live a sort of most peaceful, comfortable, contented existences on a day-to-day basis. Knowing what your core values are and then aligning your decisions to those core values is exactly the same thing. Remember that your core values reflect what matters the most to you. And so when you are able to articulate what they are and align your decisions to them on a daily basis, it really serves to minimize friction. And when you minimize friction, you can maximize impact. Just think about your experience as a leader on a day-to-day basis right now. Think about the times when you are most impactful. Chances are it is when you are able to minimize friction, things that get in the way, tough things within our teams, challenges, hurdles in the world. Those all serve to increase friction. And when there is more friction, we are less able to be impactful as employees, as teammates, as leaders, as family members, whatever it is. And so when we align to our core values, we're able to really reduce some of that friction. So let me give you an example of what this really looks like in a wild. And I'll tell you an example from my personal sort of life and leadership. When the pandemic hit, it was one of the hardest times as a business owner for me. I think it was just because I had so little visibility on what the future held. We immediately, the first week where the shutdown happened, lost a couple of clients. A couple of clients ended contracts because of the financial strain on their organizations. And then there was some, it impacted our team members in lots of different ways. There was just sort of this sudden change overnight that I wasn't expecting or prepared for. And I just didn't know what the future held. And I felt so uncertain, and I felt very burdened to lead my team through this and to provide leadership for my clients when I really had no idea what the future held, and I didn't know what any of the answers were. And it was really an incredibly stressful time. Maybe some of you can relate to this. I think that period of time impacted us all in different ways. And so feeling panicked, I came back to my core values. And I really have 3 core values that I come back to over and over and over. So the first one is movement. And I mean that in the sense of forward progress, but I also mean it in the sense of like physically moving around. It's just very important to me. It helps me connect to myself. It helps me work things through. And, of course, like it did for many of us, my routines changed overnight. And so what I was able to, usually how I was able to move, how I was able to exercise was not available to me. So I knew that I had to find another way. So I started building in a daily walk that was sort of extra because I just needed to move my body, and it really helped me to process and think things through. Another core value is learning. And when I was able to reconnect to this core value of learning, where I thought, I'm about to learn a ton. I'm going into this period that is completely unprecedented. Not only do I know what I'm doing, don't know what I'm doing, but really nobody knows what they're doing. And so it's not like there's an article I can read or a book I can buy about how to navigate this. But when I shifted my mindset into one of curiosity instead of one of feeling responsible, it really relieved pressure to get it right and invited me to be able to fail and to have the freedom to fail and to know that my expectation for myself was to do my best and not to get it perfect. And then my last core value is kindness, or my first core value really is kindness. And so it was a reminder to be kind, not only to myself, but to other people. And so I found ways to be intentionally kind to my team members, to my family members, to check in with people, to buy gifts where I could, to create space for people. And it got me through. it got me through, and I moved from sort of panic to feeling like I had a plan fairly quickly. And it was from that space that I was able to do this exact thing that I'm talking about, that I could reduce the friction so that I was able to get back to a place of driving impact. Core values are such an incredible, and I really think underrated tool for change makers. And there's a few reasons for that. The first is that when you make decisions from your core values, you prioritize what matters the most to you. And we know that in the course of our work, that there are all kinds of challenges and unexpected surprises that come up on a daily basis. But when you are able to think about what matters the most to me in this situation, you are really able to think about how to take action in a way that's authentic to who you are as a leader. They also emphasize process over outcome. Consider the example I just shared at the beginning of the pandemic. I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. I couldn't even set goals for myself because the landscape was completely changing under my feet on a day-to-day basis. But what I could do was emphasize the actions I was taking on a day-to-day basis. And that really helped alleviate the pressure I felt around trying to control outcomes. It also puts you back in the driver's seat. Again, with this pandemic example, I went from feeling completely out of control to feeling like I had a plan. And even though it was a loose plan, it was a plan. And it really alleviated this feeling of just uncertainty and chaos that I was living in at the time. And then this might be the most important reason why core values are such an invaluable tool, is that it is flexible to every single circumstance. No matter what you are experiencing today, and no matter what unexpected challenge is waiting for you around the corner, these set of core values that you hold are just so important to be, and flexible to being able to help you navigate whatever challenge that it is. No two people share the same set of core values defined the same way. So your core values are as unique to you as your DNA or your thumbprint, which means that you have this highly personalized, flexible Swiss Army knife of a tool hiding within you that you can use to navigate every single challenge that will come up within the course of your work. And remember what we were talking about in terms of the rapid rate of change that we're living in? Is there anything that you would need that more than something that is flexible to every single circumstance? And I think a lot of people have a sense of what their values are, but being able to list and define what your small set, so 2 or 3 values are, is an absolute game changer as a leader. If this is something that you are interested in knowing more about, we will be digging into it at the workshop. I also have a worksheet on my website that, if you take a quick picture of this QR code, will link you straight to it. And it's sort of a worksheet that leads you through step by step, being able to identify what your core values are. This is an activity that you can do solo, you can do it with your teams, you can do it with your family, and it really is a phenomenal tool for anybody working today to have in their back pocket. But is it going to help you prepare for and respond to change? Yes, it is. It's just not the full story. So we already know that you need a vision story for the world that you are creating, which will help you focus on what is possible instead of what's missing. We already know that you need core values to enable you to focus on what matters most when you are navigating all of the challenges between point A and point B, that vision story that you are creating. But what about proactive action? That is not going to make itself. And so how is it that you as a social change leader are going to drive momentum forward? And this is about creating systems for consistent, focused action over time. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. Some of you who might be thinking about the vision that you're going to create, or even some of the work that you're already doing, either have in your possession or you're starting to imagine a multi-tab calendared, color-coded, complex spreadsheet with like lots of drop-down menus and dependencies built in, and I completely understand the urge to develop these sort of grand strategic plans that get us from point A to point B. I know you, I am you, I see you, I completely understand. But the challenge of developing these very complex sort of step-by-step action plans is exactly what we've been talking about today, is this rate of change. That things are changing so quickly that we are not afforded the luxury of as social change leaders today to be able to sit and plan and ponder what this is going to be like and then execute. Instead, what we need to do is create a culture of taking consistent, focused action over time that is responsive to the reality of the moment. An example that might drive this point home is what it might look like when you're going into the gym. So if you are going to the gym and you want to get healthier and you want to get stronger, you don't just walk in and start sort of flinging around the 50-pound dumbbells on the first day. Or maybe you don't do, but I certainly don't. You start small. You start with a light weight. And when you lift those light weights consistently over time, you gain strength, and then eventually you move up to the next weight class. And if you keep going, just consistent action over time, you will slowly and incrementally grow stronger. You will slowly and incrementally be able to lift heavier weights. And you'll also grow in different ways. You'll be able to complete more repetitions in a set. You'll be able to complete more sets. You'll get injured less easily. You will notice a difference in your health and how you feel about yourself. Maybe you don't need as much rest and recovery. And then sometimes you'll sustain an injury, or life will get in the way and you'll kind of fall off track. And then maybe you'll take a break, and then when you get back to the gym, you'll feel like you've lost a ton of progress, and that can be very, very disconcerting to have to start again. Creating change is just like this process. Consistent action over time that results in incremental impact. Repetition over and over and over and over. Setbacks, rest, recovery, start again. Some initiatives and projects and campaigns work. Others don't. But there's opportunity for us to learn and to advance our impact every single step of the way. But what you want to be doing within your team is creating a culture that really breeds that kind of consistent action over time. Extending this analogy, if you think about the system that goes into the consistent focused action at the gym, you have to get to the gym. So you need to figure out what your transportation is. You need to complete your workout. So you need to know what your planned exercises and repetitions are. You need to know how you're going to recover. So that's rest and sleep. And then you need to know how you're going to build, which is your nutrition. And very simply stated, this is the system, and repeating the system over and over and over and over is the system that creates gains in the gym. And so what we're looking to create within our teams is an equivalent of this set of systems that builds, that creates impact within our sector and within the work that we're doing. So put another way, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. This is one of my very, very favorite quotes. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And so we do need that vision story, but we also need to be able to create a culture of taking focused action over time. So what does this look like within your teams? First of all, you want clear, achievable goals broken into smaller, actionable steps that drive to that vision story. So from that 10-year or whatever your time horizon is, vision story, you need to be able to break that down into smaller, achievable goals and update that regularly. So what you don't want to do is come up with we're going to do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. You want to know what the first step is, and then see what you learn, evaluate, and go back and think about, okay, now what's the next step? So you need to take action, review, and adjust. Take action, review, and adjust. You want to stay focused on the essential. The number one mistake that I see change makers and change leaders make, and I'm sure that we can all relate to this. I know that I can. I make this mistake all the time, even though I teach it, is to try to do too much at once. Too many projects, too many initiatives, too many things that we're involved in. And it is very, very difficult to pick the most important thing because it's all important. But when we pick the most important thing, that is when we will truly drive impact, because we're reducing burnout or likelihood of burnout and really focusing on what is essential. And then you want to make sure that the actions that you're taking are always connected to your vision and your values. And so you start to see how this all builds on top of each other. We have that vision story of what we are seeking to create. And that really helps us to identify, what are our core values? What matters the most to us? And we use those core values as we are navigating the challenges between today and the vision that we're creating. Then you want to use those core values to really help you shape, how are we making sure that we are optimized for action within our teams? What bottlenecks exist? What things are getting in the way? And then what you may remember that there is a fourth piece. And the fourth piece really is the secret sauce. So if you think about your favorite burger joint that you go to, and there's always just this burger that you're just like, oh, it's my favorite burger. And it's always because of the sauce. It's always the sauce that just makes it your very, 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 very favorite food. Even though the secret sauce is probably mayonnaise and ketchup mixed together, for whatever reason, it just like makes the thing. And that's what this fourth thing is like. This fourth step is the secret sauce of driving change. And that is the belief that you can make change. I want to ask you a question, and there is going to be a poll that is popping up. So if you can just answer that question when you get there. And that is, how many of you brush your teeth at least once a day? This is always a fun question to see how many people say no. Do you brush your teeth at least once a day? So while I'm waiting for the answer to come up, I'm going to tell you that apparently, according to research, 70% of Americans brush their teeth at least once a day, which might be lower than you're expecting. But why do we, for the most part, brush our teeth on a daily basis? The biggest answer is it's a habit. You have just gotten used to doing it over time. But if you start to sort of dig, one person who's brave enough to say that they don't brush their teeth every day. So 97% of this group, so we're above average, brush our teeth every single day. So you do that because it's a habit, but probably underneath that habit is the belief that it's good for you. It's good for your dental hygiene. It's good for your relationships. It's good for your health, whatever. If there was research published tomorrow that suggested that there was a direct correlation between brushing your teeth and dying an early painful death, less people would brush their teeth every day. And if that research, if that evidence built over time, slowly and gradually over time, less and less people would brush their teeth every day. If you came to believe that brushing your teeth was not good for you, but bad for you, you would change the habit. And that is because belief drives action. If we do not believe that we are capable of realizing that vision story, then we won't be. If you and the people that you work with do not believe that you are capable of driving change on the local level, then you absolutely won't. But here's the good news. I don't think that belief comes from just closing your eyes and crossing your fingers and being like, I believe. I think that belief comes from action. That when you take action, when you take consistent, focused action over time, and it delivers results, you and the people around you build their belief that you are capable of driving impact. And then you take more action, and then you take more action. And that conviction, that belief that you drive impact, then feeds directly into realizing your vision story. And so you see how each one of these really builds on the other And then we are creating a perpetual cycle of driving impact. And when you are creating this within your teams, that is when you are able to prepare for, respond to, and drive change. And that is when you are going to truly change the world. And you all do it already. And so I sincerely hope that I've been able to offer some nuggets that will help to propel your work. Like I mentioned, that we are going into a lot of, and what we'll be doing at the workshop on the 16th, which is at the Flinn Foundation, is going into the 3 tools. So the vision story, the core values, and the actions, the system action, the systems for action. And we'll be workshopping those and actually going through those in real time so that you will leave with tools that you'll be able to implement within your work on a daily basis. If I have heard from some people that they're not available on that day. And so if you go to catherinealonzo.com and sign up for my email newsletter, I'll be sending alerts about other workshops. So if that's something that you're interested, you can go there. And with that, I would love to take any questions that there might be.
Catherine, this is Dawn. You have questions in the chat.
Oh, we do? Oh, I'm sorry. There's a lot. 1 second. Oh, here you go. Can you talk about how responding to the setbacks, like injuries to the gym, fits into systems? Yes. Okay. So the question is, so how do you respond to those setbacks? How does that fit into your systems? Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things here, Brian, to keep in mind. And if you have a specific example you would like to share, please feel free to pop that in the chat or do that verbally. But where we run into issues is when we have a plan that extends beyond a perceived problem. So let's say we've decided, okay, we're going to do A, B, and C, and then something goes wrong in B. And then what often happens is we don't adjust and we keep going with what we thought was going to happen in C. And that's where we get kind of stuck. And so the most important part of your sort of action-oriented culture is being able to be responsive. So you want to be able to create a culture in which when things go wrong, you're thinking, does it still make sense for us to do what we were going to do, or do we need to readjust? That's kind of thematically the most important one. But if there's a specific thing you're thinking of, let me know and I can give you a more specific answer. And then Paloma's question, what are your thoughts about organizing coalitions whose represented groups have different core beliefs yet need to work together? Okay, so this is a really great question. And this comes up with organizational core values and individual core values. So I'll take your question first and then I'll give an individual example. So to answer your specific question, you have you're organizing coalitions and there's different groups and they have different core beliefs, and yeah, there's a work to need together. First of all, just identifying the difference in the core beliefs can be really helpful, and taking the judgment out of it. So being able to say group A believes this and group B believes this and group C believes this, And is what it is. Like, we're just naming it, we're calling it out. That can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. Identifying whether that is going to create any conflicts and what you are going to do when those arise. So, just to think of a general example, let's say that different groups share different political beliefs. So you think, okay, what are we going to do if this situation comes up where our differences in political beliefs are a challenge? What is our plan for that? So that's step 2. And then step 3 would be to really focus on where you overlap. What are the beliefs, those core values, those core beliefs that you share, and how can you prioritize those in your communication and your work together? And kind of the same thing, it happens with individuals with core values that can conflict. Usually when 2 people are not getting along within a group or a team, it is because they're valuing a different thing. So you see this all the time as it relates to things like timeline and deadlines, where invariably some people really, it is very important to them that if a deadline is set, that is observed. And then for other people, freedom and flexibility is really important. And those 2 things clash up against each other all the time within organizations. And just being able to identify, okay, we have a value difference here. This is my priority and this is your priority. There's no right or wrong. We just both have our value, our thing that matters the most to us. And so then what are we going to do when we run into situations where we might be on different pages? And then same thing, how can we focus on where we align and what we share in terms of our preferences and priorities? Russell's question: if you have a team you've put together and must include persons that may not necessarily align with your vision, what is the best way to deal with them? Try to drag them along or marginalize them. Let me think about this. If you have a team you've put together and you must include people that may not necessarily align with your vision. So what I think you want to do is create an environment in which there is opportunity for people to buy into the vision. But ultimately, if there's already an existing vision and it is what it is, this is one of the reasons it's so important, is that those involved in realizing that vision have to be in alignment with it. And if they're not bought into this vision, then this is not the best place for them. And that, I think, can be a direct conversation. Like, this is what we're creating and why. And I want you to believe in this. I want you to feel bought into this, but this isn't changing. And so if this isn't for you, then this might not be the place. And a direct conversation about that can be really helpful. Great, Brian, thank you. I'm glad that answer made sense. If folks have other questions, my contact information is all on my website, and I'm just very grateful to have spent this time with you guys today. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here.